Ecocriticism examines how literature and culture portray the relationship between humans and nature, focusing on concerns about humanity's harmful impact on the environment. It is also known as environmental criticism or green cultural studies to include film, TV, virtual worlds, music, and urban spaces. Critics in this field define themselves by their stance on environmental issues and how they interpret key concepts. Despite its growing diversity, eco-criticism is often seen as lacking legitimacy or coherence in critical theory. Peter Barry views it as a niche field with no widely accepted set of beliefs or methods. The complexity of the subject requires continual critique and a variety of approaches, making it challenging. Lawrence Buell emphasizes the need for ecological awareness as the field becomes more global and interdisciplinary. Eco-critics generally agree that we are in an environmental crisis shaped by cultural choices. They aim to critique damaging concepts and highlight better ways of understanding our relationship with nature. The roots of eco-criticism can be traced to the 1960s when environmental awareness began to rise. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, published in 1962, is often cited as a catalyst for modern environmentalism. Despite early efforts in the 1960s and 1970s, eco-criticism took time to establish itself. The first professional organization, the Association for the Study of Literature and Environment, was formed in the USA in 1992, signaling its institutionalization. Similar initiatives followed in the UK and Ireland, reflecting a growing interest in eco-critical studies. Early eco-criticism faced challenges in the humanities, which initially viewed environmental issues as primarily scientific. It also struggled with the difficulty of speaking on behalf of the earth itself. Unlike other emerging theories like feminism and post-colonialism, which gained traction by giving voice to marginalized perspectives, eco-criticism had to carve out its place amid linguistic and theoretical challenges of the time. Early eco-critics critiqued structuralism and post-structuralism of the 1970s and 1980s for their focus on language as a closed system, which they felt hindered efforts to advocate for environmental concerns. Their goal was to create theoretical space for discussing the physical impact of human consumption habits on the environment, emphasizing the urgent need for environmental advocacy in academic discourse. The first wave of eco-criticism in the USA focused on how literature represents the natural world, seeking texts that effectively convey environmental messages. Lawrence Buell identified four key elements for environmentally oriented works, stressing that human history is intertwined with natural history. Buell also emphasized the ethical direction of texts, promoting a commitment to environmental action known as environmentalist praxis. Eco-criticism extends beyond cultural exploration to political engagement, aiming to influence real-world practices. It seeks to educate interactions with nature and promote a counter-canon of texts that embody sustainable ways of living. Cheryl Clodfelty expanded on Buell's ideas and anticipated later eco-critical concerns. In the USA, the first wave favored non-fiction nature writing by authors like Thoreau and Abbey, celebrated for their environmental insights. In Britain, first wave eco-criticism focused on poetry that highlighted the natural world, led by Jonathan Bate's work on romantic poets like Wordsworth. Bate emphasized poetry's role in reform our relationship with the earth, diverging somewhat from Buell's focus on direct environmental action. British eco-criticism also addresses social and political dimensions, warning of environmental threats from governmental and industrial forces. English literature often portrays wild nature alongside human activities influenced by dominant social and economic structures. As eco-criticism evolved, it began to delve deeper into social history, economic influences, and gender politics on both sides of the Atlantic. Critics of the first wave initially rehabilitated nature's representation in literature, but later questioned the movement's theoretical boundaries, making the transition to subsequent phases of eco-criticism. Deep ecology calls for a radical shift in how humans perceive their role on Earth. It promotes a biocentric and ecocentric viewpoint where the interests of the entire biosphere are prioritized over individual species, including humans. Advocates believe raising ecological awareness starts with personal values, suggesting change can only occur by connecting deeply with oneself. Social ecology argues that human domination of nature stems from inequalities among people. It suggests addressing social injustices as a prerequisite to reconciling our relationship with the environment. Critics challenge deep ecology for neglecting social issues and social ecology for underestimating the resilience of current social structures. The second wave of eco-criticism has evolved the first wave, which focused on a personal connection with nature through deep ecology, to a second wave influenced by social ecology. This newer wave also re-engaged with the critical theory it initially resisted. In the UK, philosopher Kate Soper suggested balancing the nature-endorsing approach of early eco-criticism with a nature-skeptical view, which examines how the concept of nature is constructed and used to support dominant ideologies. Lawrence Coupe further developed this idea in his introduction to the Green Studies Reader. In the US, Dana Phillips challenged eco-criticism to reconnect with critical theory, criticizing the first generation of eco-critics for rejecting literary theory and advocating for a re-evaluation of what environmental literature should be. The second wave of eco-criticism includes a reflexive approach that considers the complex intersections between nature and social and sexual politics. Established cultural theories such as ecofeminism and post-colonial eco-criticism highlight how nature has been used to support dominant ideologies related to gender, class, and race. These perspectives emphasize environmental justice, recognizing the unequal distribution of environmental benefits and risks. Ecofeminists argue that environmental damage is caused by those in positions of socio-economic power, not humanity as a whole. Some ecofeminists link the domination of women and environment, while others reject this idea to avoid biological essentialism. The concept of nature involves multiple forms of exclusion and control, affecting both non-humans and certain human groups. Racism, colonialism, and sexism often portray sexual, racial, and ethnic differences as closer to the animal and inferior. Donna Haraway highlights the need to challenge the hierarchies of Western thought that dominate women, people of color, nature, workers, and animals. Ecofeminism and environmental justice explore the connection between environment and the body, with women often facing environmental hazards in their communities. This view incorporates elements of identity politics and emphasizes the interaction between environment and body. Post-colonial criticism links the ideological constructions of nature to the oppression and exploitation of colonized peoples and their environments. Environmental issues have been central to European conquest and global domination, and contemporary neoliberalism continues to harm the world's poor through new forms of neocolonialism. This ongoing colonialist influence has led eco-critics to reassess environmentalism. Ramachandra Guha and Juan Martinez Alias' term environmentalism of the poor distinguishes between the environmentalism of rich nations in the northern hemisphere and that of the global south. This distinction highlights the neo-colonial nature of some environmental discourses, which can conflict with the resource needs of the poor in the global south. The idea that poor nations might suffer further environmental degradation to satisfy the environmental demands of rich nations is troubling. These arguments challenge eco-critics to adopt a more globally nuanced. Rob Nixon's book, Slow Violence and the Environmentalism of the Poor, has been influential for highlighting how environmental harm unfolds gradually and often unnoticed over time and space. He terms this phenomenon slow violence, which is not immediately recognized as violence but has profound long term effects. Nixon advocates for forms of writing that can make these hidden impacts visible, calling for writer activists driven by a sense of urgency and justice to address these issues. Post-colonial eco-critics have embraced the concept of magic realism to illustrate this invisibility of slow violence. For instance, Indira Sinha's novel Animals People, based on the Bhopal disaster, uses magical elements to depict environmental devastation in a way that traditional realism cannot fully capture. The concept of slow violence is significant in the context of the Anthropocene, an era marked by extensive human impact on the environment. It underscores the need for eco-criticism to adopt a more comprehensive and global approach that transcends national boundaries. Recent discussions in journals like Green Left have drawn on social, ecological, and Marxist frameworks such as Jason Moore's World Ecology to analyze global environmental issues. This approach, termed worlding in post-colonial literary criticism, aims to explore the cultural, political, and aesthetic dimensions of environmental discourse across diverse cultural traditions. Michael Niblett identifies irrealism as a literary device common across global literatures used to represent the ecological disruptions caused by global capitalism. This concept helps articulate the and often catastrophic changes in ecosystems that defy straightforward representation. Eco-criticism's third wave emerged in 2009, emphasizing cultural diversity while seeking to transcend national boundaries. Known as eco-cosmopolitics, this development aims to foster a global cultural imagination and understanding. Ursula Hayes describes this shift as deterritorialization, where societies worldwide become increasingly interconnected, leading to the emergence of new cultural forms. The environmental challenge is to envision advocacy for the non-human world and promote socio-environmental justice that spans territories and global systems. In 2010, the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth was adopted at the World People's Conference on Climate Change in Bolivia. It asserts that all beings are part of a living community with a shared destiny on Earth. This declaration highlights environmental harm caused by global capitalism and advocates for social and environmental justice, echoing similar to those of deep ecologist Arne Nazar's biospherical egalitarianism. Advocating for the rights of the non-human expands the concept of environmental justice to include the environment itself, uniting groups whose interests were once considered separate. For instance, a protest in Peru in 2006 brought together indigenous peoples, environmental activists, and academics to oppose a mining project near Ocean Gate Mountain. This protest exemplifies a politics of nature where diverse groups collaborate despite differing views on what constitutes nature. The fourth wave of eco-criticism now focuses on exploring how matter moves across bodies in complex entanglements, challenging distinctions between nature and culture as well as within human societies. The fourth wave of material eco-criticism, emerging alongside other strands of eco-criticism, draws from Stacey Alaimo's concept of transcorporeality in material feminisms. This concept explores how material exchanges occur among human bodies, animal bodies, and the broader material world as theorized by feminists across disciplines. Alaimo defines transcorporeality as focusing on these material exchanges. This approach requires nuanced analysis that navigates through realms of material and discursive, natural and cultural, biological and textual. It challenges us both intellectually and ethically by highlighting the interconnectedness of human corporeality with the non human world, suggesting that material interactions demand broader ways of understanding. This opens up ethical and political possibilities that acknowledge the human and environment are inseparable in many realities. Material ecocriticism revolves around three main ideas: the belief in a shared materiality between humans and non-human world, the recognition that all matter possesses agency, and the ethical and political implications of these complex material interactions. These concepts continue to shape current eco-critical theory, illustrating how eco-critical approaches evolve through their application. Eco-criticism has expanded into exploring post-humanist ideas, challenging traditional concepts of the human hierarchical great chain of being. Scholars like Ulfe and Derrida have critiqued the category of animal and introduced the term animot to blur distinctions between humans and other species. This perspective highlights the diverse and varied nature of all living beings, placing humans within a broader spectrum of life forms. Within post-humanist inquiry, there is a focus on animal studies which explores the sentience of non-human animals. However, there is a tension between this focus and ecological perspectives that emphasize the value of entire ecosystems over individual species or animals. Westling further develops Derrida's ideas with animate post-humanism, which integrates the decentering of human perspectives with an exploration of animal subjectivity and our interconnectedness with the Earth's life systems. This approach contrasts with techno or cyborg post-humanism, which often perpetuates divisive ways of thinking. Serenella Iovino builds on these concepts by suggesting that new materialist perspectives, which emphasize shared materiality between humans and the non-human world, can dissolve binary distinctions between humans and nature. This dissolution encourages a more egalitarian and morally expansive view of ecological relationships, aligning with the principles of deep ecology. Material eco-criticism highlights the concept that matter possesses its own agency, challenging traditional distinctions between human and non-human entities. It emphasizes that matter is not merely passive but actively generative, constantly evolving and interacting. This perspective creates a multiply tiered ontology where there are no clear boundaries between sentient and non-sentient beings or between material phenomena. Biosemiotic and ecosemiotic viewpoints, as advocated by Wendy Wheeler and David Abraham, illustrate how matter communicates and creates meaning through science embedded in the natural world. This approach also aims to bridge the artificial divide between culture and nature, recognizing their interconnectedness and mutual dependence. However, the concept of shared materiality also introduces challenges, particularly in scenarios like the global circulation of toxins and genetic engineering. These complex interactions between human and non-human elements raise significant ontological and ethical questions. Bruno Latour suggests that when humans and non-humans interact, they mutually enhance each other's capabilities and introduce new possibilities and functions. Yet these interactions can lead to unpredictable outcomes as matter develops unexpected forms of agency, influencing both bodies and environments in unforeseen ways. Jane Bennell's concept of shared materiality emphasizes the intricate interplay between human and non-human entities, biology, and politics. She argues that terms like deep and social ecology become outdated because they fail to capture the complexity of these entanglements. Bennett explores the notion of thing power through examples like a garbage hill in New Jersey, where the physical presence of the landfill influences its surroundings, potentially contaminating groundwater with toxic substances that mix and react over time. The idea of transcorporeality, illustrated by the concept of slow violence, shows how human made materials take on new roles with unintended consequences. For instance, photographer Chris Jordan documents how plastic waste in the Pacific is ingested by albatrosses, leading to their death. This demonstrates a hybridity that blurs distinctions between human and non human agencies, according to scholars like Serenella Iovino. In post-humanist perspectives, such as those articulated by feminist scientist Karen Barad, there is a move beyond traditional dualisms between human and non-human. This approach examines the complex philosophical, epistemological, and ethical implications of interconnectedness in our understanding of the world. However, some thinkers caution against expecting theories to solve ecological crises outright. John Mayer warns against the belief that developing a new worldview alone can fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with nature. Timothy Martin's concept of ecological thought suggests a need for theoretical rigor that acknowledges the complexities and limitations of environmentalism, urging a critical examination of its assumptions and blind spots rather than seeking definitive solutions. Ecocriticism has evolved significantly from its early focus on non-fiction nature writing to encompass a wide array of cultural expressions and sophisticated theoretical frameworks. The Association for the Study of Literature and Environment, now comprising 10 affiliate organizations globally and numerous journals, reflects its robust academic presence and international reach. However, there remains introspection within the movement regarding its purpose. In a recent discussion in the Journal of Ecocriticism, William Major and Andrew McMurray expressed a cautious hope amidst humanity's environmental challenges, noting that ecocriticism has become a cautious hope amidst humanity's environmental challenges, noting that eco-criticism has become entrenched in institutional structures, perhaps straying from its original mission to reconnect with the natural world. Conversely, Roman Bartosz and Greg Garrard argued for embracing a daring and unconventional future, advocate close, deliberate readings of literary texts. They emphasize the importance of critical attention to uncover contradictions and complexities in conventional wisdom. Over the past 2 decades, eco-criticism has demonstrated its capability to engage deeply with critical theory. It has embedded environmentality as a central concern in humanities scholarship, fostering a global awareness of ecological responsibility and environmental justice. This discourse has illuminated humanity's complex relationship with the material world, navigating realms described as post-human and post-nature, while grappling with the ongoing task of understanding these evolving states. Given the accelerating degradation of the environment, Bartosz and Garrett's call for meticulous and thorough examination of cultural works seems timely. This approach allows eco-critics to apply new theoretical frameworks to analyze various cultural forms, scrutinizing how these representations both reflect and shape our ways of inhabiting and interacting with the world.